Hello, everybody.
Hey there.
Welcome back. We are Nat and Mandy from the Infinite Me. And yes, we are sisters. We've had a few people asking.
I know. This is like the Brady Bunch boxes. So, yes, we are actually part of one family.
So we're from the Infinite Me, as I said, and we're here talking about everything that makes up being infinite in this lifetime, what that actually means to be here in this human body, but to have the infinite energy moving through you and living that in the world and the creativity that lets you be in the world. So yesterday, actually talking about creativity, that was what we actually did speak about on yesterday's video. So was all around this idea that people say, I'm not creative. And so we had a really good discussion around that's kind of impossible because you're infinite and creativity is the only thing that's animating us right now. So if creativity is a thing that you kind of struggle with, or you'd like to tap into that more and know how to actually be in that space a lot more, we talked all about that yesterday. So
yeah, it was good. Really good topic.
Yeah, it was a good topic. Yep. So today we thought we're going to jump into around ego and how essentially the ego is not actually even real. So,
the ego doesn't even exist, so why are we even talking about it?
Yes.
Why are we talking about it, Mandy?
I don't know. I guess we were talking about it because it does come up, obviously, a lot when you're on the awakening journey. Like you spend a lot of time, I guess, analyzing things a lot of the time. Things are coming up and you get caught into the stories. And so then you sort of, once you start to kind of have some awareness around your consciousness and your thoughts, you do tend to naturally get drawn in a little bit into looking at the ego and what that's about, and maybe unraveling some of the stories that maybe plagued you through your whole life, or consistent themes that keep coming up. So and we often get kind of stuck in that way of being as well. I know I definitely have on the journey too. Like specifically, some teachers just keep you in that space at the end of the day, and you keep going round and round and get to a point where you kind of realize this is going to keep going on forever. Like the ego, it's just, there is no end to it. So we were just chatting more about the idea of like, well, if we're coming from this infinite space and everything is a creation of ours, ultimately at the end of the day, we're here as an infinite being expressing through the, human finite body, and we've got all these other people around us that we can interact with. And so the ego exists in that human world. But if we're the infinite being that's creating this whole thing, then the ego has to be a creation of that as well. It can't be a separate thing that exists outside infiniteness. It just can't. Like infinity means, there is no beginning, there is no end, there is only one being. So therefore the ego, it has to be part of it, has to be a creation of the infinite being.
Yeah, it's a concept that I first heard through Gas and Amir, who are good friends of ours, who both are very intuitive and run a lot of workshops around this sort of concept as well, around oneness and what we're talking about here, the infinite. And I remember going over to their mum's place they'd always get together on a Sunday for lunch, and they're a Persian family. So she has become, over the years, known as the Oracle, and she's an amazing lady.
Yes.
Just a lady that you can feel, like, as soon as you're in her presence type thing, it's like, holy crap, like there's just something about her. And she speaks okay English, but a lot of the time she'll speak Persian, and it'll be translated through Gaz or whatever. So I remember sitting there, and she said to Gaz and I one time, one day you'll come to both realize that there actually is no ego. And I was like, okay. This is many years ago type thing. And I was like, that's an interesting concept. So I sort of really sat with it, because I guess at that time, like you're saying, man, you're going through different spiritual teachers and consciousness awakenings, and you're going through all this stuff, and it's all about ego. Like there's so much conversation going on about the ego and what it does, and the ego stories and the ego games, and even Gaz was going through that sort of stuff, like in group sessions I did with her for many months. We'd all get around and we'd actually look at the ego games that everybody was playing type thing. We would be reflections off each other, and it's sort of like, oh, yeah, I can see I can do that. Like, oh, yeah, I play that game type thing. I try and manipulate this. I try to do this.
Yeah.
So
bring
really
awareness to the how the ego plays out.
Yeah, that's right. And it was like, so it was such an interesting concept when she said it. It was like, okay, the more I sat with it, and it's taken quite a few years, it's like, actually, you're right. There isn't. There can't be. Actually, like even when you apply logic to it, there can't be, because if there is only one infinite energy that we all belong to and we all come from, and everything gets created from that, then there is no ego. Like there's no separation, because the whole premise of the ego is actually separation. So you feel like you're separate from the one. You're all by yourself here. You're going to try to navigate your little journey, and then you need to start manipulating things and start having agendas for actually creating the storyline that you want.
Yes.
And it's always this sort of toing and froing type thing. Sometimes I'm infinite and I'm in the flow and I'm getting things really easily, and other things I'm struggling.
Yes.
And I guess the ego gives rise to that whole concept of suffering. It's only possible to suffer if you're in the ego.
Yes.
So it's like, how does that work then if the ego doesn't even exist? So it's just so interesting. Like it's not a concept that we're going to be even 100% be able to get languaging to work or get our heads around. It's just something you have to feel into. And I must say I have sat with it for many years now, and I've gone, you're 100% right. There isn't an ego. And what would happen, I guess I just asked the question, what would happen if there was no ego? Like, what does that look like then? If I just removed the concept, because it can only be a concept at the end of the day. If I took the concept away of the fact that there's an ego, then how do I feel about my journey and what I'm doing here? And that just changes everything as far as I'm concerned, because you can't possibly be making a mistake in anything. Never.
Yes.
Because it's all part of the journey that you are meant to be having here right now.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess that concept that we've talked about in a few different videos now over the time is this idea that if you're an infinite being, like what would be the ultimate kind of thing that you could kind of create? Like if you could have absolutely anything and create anything in the world, and then you decide, well, I'm going to create the human game so that I can experience limitation and, completely come here, completely forget who I am, divide, I think of it like a game, create all these other characters in the game to sort of interact with, and every person that's here thinks that they're a limited being as well, and so you're interacting with all these other limited beings and all aspects of the one consciousness. That's the thing, it's like this one consciousness is kind of dividing its energy, if you like, and putting it into these little human beings here on earth, and here to sort of come and forget who we are. And the journey, the game is to kind of remember, come back home to remember who you truly are. So if you come from that concept, then you think, well, the ego is a creation in the human game. It only exists in the human game because we come here and we think we're separate. We think that I'm Mandy here and that's over there, and my personality is X and Nat's personality is this, and she has this story going on and I have this story going on, and we interact like that, and then things happen in the storyline and we make decisions, and so the ego just gets strengthened, because we're kind of here thinking we are separate and we can't just tap in when we want to, or it's like a hard, that process we talked about this the other day, about this idea of like you can't just unplug at any point. Like you're always connected. It's just our perception that we're not connected in. So the ego would like to tell us all those things. So all the things that the ego jumps in and tells us we can't do this and we can't do that, and who are you to do that? Or it builds us up and sort of says, yeah, go and do that. Like, yeah, you're better than that person.
You're better than that person. Yeah.
Yeah, all the stories that kind of go on. But then, if you look at it from that bigger perspective, like Nat's sort of talking about, it's just like, well, it only exists in that human game when you think about it. Like it can't, as you said, like if you take it to its logical conclusion, it can't be anything else. Like it's part of this experience. So you come here as this human being and it's attached to your like entity, if you like, that you're here in this lifetime. Everyone has their own ego and how that talks to them. Like, and it's very specific to you and your journey and your propensities in life and how you show up and your skills. And but then as your consciousness grows and you bring more awareness to it, like you probably notice if you've been on this awakening journey for a while, that your ego gets more clever, like it gets very crafty and starts to speak in the language that you're even talking then. So it's sort of like you can convince yourself it's just like, oh, I can't get rid of this ego, like it's always there, like it's easy to fall into that trap thinking it's always there. And you are, it is true to think that, because in the human game it is there. You will never get rid of the ego, and it's not a bad thing. Like at the end of the day, it's like it's just part of your experience. But from the ultimate big picture, it can't actually exist.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
Change the game, as you said, it does completely shift how you, when you come from that angle, it does shift how you can then use the ego to perhaps play with as you go along your journey. So
yeah, and I think that's it. It's once you become aware of the bigger picture type thing that we're talking about here right now, is that the ego actually doesn't exist, then that's what collapses it. So I think we were talking about this the other day, that as soon as you observe something in reality, it changes its form.
Yes.
So it goes from just energy, potential, anything. It could be created into anything type thing. As soon as you observe it, and this is a lot of science, I know, and I'm probably not doing it justice, but as soon as you observe that waveform, that infinite energy, it collapses itself down into form. So suddenly you start seeing tables and trees and curtains and windows and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So, and the ego is not much different. As soon as you observe the ego and you almost label it as the ego and go, oh, there's my ego, it changes it. So it can't be the ego anymore. So the ego itself is actually the unknown, I suppose. Like it's only ego when it's not identified as the ego.
Yes. The ego doesn't like to be found out. So it's like that. I've heard this analogy before, which was quite cool, in terms of like when you have a, you've got a torch and you're shining it, and then you start shining it, say, into the shadows, into the dark parts. So the ego is kind of like the shadows, doesn't want to be found out. So as soon as you sort of shine the light on that, the ego is going to try and get back into the dark again, like, and not be seen. So it's like that. It's bringing that awareness. As soon as you start to aware what's going on, you become aware of what's going on with the ego, and you see it for what it is, and just be what it's bringing up, rather than judging it and labeling it, which is what we normally tend to do, and that just strengthens its identity. But if you just shine that light of truth on it and just let it be what it is, it can't exist in that light anymore. It has to disappear. Like, you can't have a torch shining and then still be a shadow. It just doesn't work that way. Like, it's the light, the shadow. Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of the whole concept of magic trick. So you watch a magic trick on stage, on TV, whatever, and you go, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, how on earth did they do that? Oh, that's incredible. Yes. Saw somebody in half, make somebody disappear. And then when you watch a show that actually takes you behind, and there are shows that do this now, take you behind the scenes of how magicians are actually doing their different magic acts. As soon as you see the solution to that and see the answer of how they've done that, it can no longer ever be magic again. Like, it can't exist anymore. You can't be eluded by it and go, holy crap, how are they doing that? Like, it must be magic. I can't believe it.
You can't unsee something or unknow something once you know what it's going to do.
So it dissolves. The magic dissolves because you've seen it, and just go, oh, okay, it's just somebody doing X, Y, Z. Like, okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So, and the ego is very similar. So you can think about it the same way, sort of thing. Like, as in, as soon as you've seen the ego, the magic is gone from it. Like, it just can't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess in us answering this question, what do you do to forget and how to get over your ego? It takes a big place in our life. It does take a big place in our life. And I think it's taking a bigger place than it needs to, because we keep talking about it.
Yeah. It's like that thing, the more you put the attention on it in the form of, because we've just talked about, bringing awareness to it. So that's a different type of attention. But the normal attention that we put with the ego is to really engage it. So we hear the little voice, and then we let that mean something about ourselves. Like, so we have a little, narrative that's kind of going on around that, or we judge that feeling. We try to repress that voice that's kind of there and try to deny that it's actually there, and the feelings that it's bringing up. So whereas we're talking more about bringing the awareness of truth to it, where it's actually seeing it, like sitting with that feeling, I guess, but not actually giving it any sort of label or anything. It's just knowing it as a sensation in your body, like rather than hearing it as a voice and making that mean something about you. So I guess it is kind of disconnecting yourself from the actual story that the ego wants you to believe about yourself. So it is just that awareness, like keep shining the light on it. So it isn't like a one-time deal.
No, it's all the time.
It's something you have to keep bringing your awareness to. You hear the ego voice coming in, bring some awareness to it, sit with it, even if you can't do that in the moment. Sometimes it's, you know, you're in the middle of doing something, but later on you could sort of just go, wow, I wonder what that feeling was that was coming up, and actually sit with the feeling and let it just be a sensation in your body without labeling it, which takes a bit of practice. It's not like you're so used to labeling it and things. So it does take some practice just to bring some awareness to seeing it as a feeling in your body and letting it just be what it's got to be, and then it will pass out of your body. And the more you can do that, the more that you do just to see it, you start to see it, like as Nat was saying before about it's just an aspect of you to start kind of playing with. Is now it doesn't have the power over you anymore. Like the more that you keep gaining your power back out of those stories that you've let it sort of tell you over the years, which is by sitting with it and not labeling it and judging it, the more you take your power back from it, it can't actually influence you anymore. Like it'll still be there. That's the thing. It's just like a little kid that's following you around almost. Like it's just kind of, it's more like it's there it is like, if it's there as part of our journey, we can't actually get rid of it. It is an aspect of the human journey. So you might as well actually kind of make friends with it. It's not a bad thing to get rid of. Like it's actually something you can just play with, I guess, at the end of the day. Like that's what it becomes. But no, it's actually not you. You're the infinite being that's animating everything. And you created the ego as well.
Yeah. I guess it's not unlike a movie set and the characters are there, and you know, you might be acting out the main character and you get given a script. So you might have written the script yourself. You might even be directing the movie. Who knows? Like a lot of actors are now directing their own movies. So at the time of acting. But you get given a script. So you follow that script along. All these things happen to your character. You know, you have a relationship breakup. You lose your job. You have no money. You're down and out. Then the story comes back up again, and you go through the hero's journey, because every story follows the hero's journey, including your own. And you know, we fight through, we battle through all the challenges, and we become our triumph on the end of it.
Yes.
So that actor is not attached to that story. I know some of them do become very attached. In fact, we've even had deaths of actors that have got so absorbed into their characters. Heath Ledger is one example of that, where they say, and that's how true it is, that he got so involved in the character of the Joker that he was playing for Batman that it actually caused whatever. So, but I guess that's that thing. Like a lot of actors talk about method acting. So you become that character. You really absorb yourself into the environment of that character, and you are that character for the period of time that you're playing that role.
Yeah.
So life is no different. We're actually just actors in our own movie. So, but when the actor finishes for the day, like, you know, they call quits for the day, then they go home. They go to their normal life. They do whatever, and they come back the next day and they start again. So it's sort of thinking of it a bit like that. They're not actually going through the things that are going on on the movie set. Like they might be doing stunts and all sorts of things, but they're actually acting all those things. So it's not their life. So it's not unlike that, quite funnily enough, that you're acting out a storyline, but your true life and your true self, if you like, is your infinite self. So you come in.
Yes.
We last for 80 years, if we're 90 years, if we're lucky, and we get to play in a movie.
Yes.
We're acting out a movie. And we have all these ups and downs in life, and we go through and we feel all these different things, but that's part of the movie because that's what makes it exciting. So if it was all just flatlining and really boring stuff and everything went really well in life, you
manifested everything at the drop of a hat. We were talking about that the other day. Like everything you thought manifested straight away. Like
bang, like Genie.
I want this. Yeah, it'd probably be fun for a week or two, but then after that, I think you'd get a little bit bored with just there'd be no sort of fun in the creativity of actually taking some time in the human story to actually create something and have an experience from it. So actually, whether that's good, bad, if that's only labels when we say good and bad, but like happy, sad, all the different emotions, we're here to express all of them. So
yeah, and that's right. And so just like an actor, you're using those different emotions to express yourself. So when you get angry, you're not an angry person. You're using anger to express yourself. When you're sad, you're not a sad person. So that a sad person is somebody actually in the story. You're actually using sadness to have an experience. And your sadness will connect you to other people because they feel empathy to you. It might get you something, in the storyline. Like, they're all just storylines, and they're all just emotions, exactly like an actor takes on, and they suddenly have to cry on set, or they have to laugh heartedly at something that's probably not even there. It's not unlike that. You're actually just using those emotions and expressions to have your storyline here and to have an experience. That's all you're doing, is having an experience here.
Yes.
In the limited form. And as an infinite being, you can't actually express yourself because you're energy. So you have to come into form, into physical form here, to actually have an experience of yourself. And that's all we're doing.
Yes.
So I think the movie thing is actually a really good analogy. So if you feel like you're getting caught in your own story again, then a great idea is to go back to that movie thing. Like we often do that. Jodie and I will sort of remind ourselves, don't forget you're in your own movie right now. I'm just a character in your movie. Don't shoot me about something like, you're getting angry at me right now. I'm just a character in your movie that you've scripted, and you're getting me to say this right now. You want me to say what I'm saying to you right now. And it's like, oh, okay. I've got to take responsibility for everything. That's what that ultimately means, is that everything that plays out in your movie, you're creating, you have to be responsible for. You can't be blaming or giving credit to somebody else.
Does that,
it's like, I can't blame Jodie or Mum or Mandy or the airlines or whoever about something that happens in my storyline, because that's what my storyline was.
Yeah, you as the infinite being has created this storyline, so that's the ultimate responsibility. You're saying, like, as the infinite being is the one that's creating the whole story that you're a character in. So so you're a character even in your own story as well. So like you've scripted yourself to be in that scenario too and have that reaction, and you get to play with it all as the consciousness in this being. So you get to play with the other character, whether it's as you said, like Jodie or your mum or me, or you've got that free will, like we sort of talked about the other day, to kind of write your script as you're going, like you're constantly creating it as you're going along. So you get to choose. So like what you said before, you can feel like you're blaming somebody or feeling like they're getting angry at you. It's just like, but that's only the ego that's going to be looking at it like that and kind of saying, well, you did this and this, therefore it caused that, and you're responsible for that, and you're bad, I'm good, all those type of things. That's only the ego that comes in to say all those things. So as that character in that story, you've got this little ego attached to you, but you can bring more consciousness into your journey now and know yourself as that infinite energy that's animating you and everything around you. And that is like a movie, as you said, it is a whole script. So how would you shift if you came from that perspective? Like, how would you start acting differently? And then you could choose to interact with everything that happens to you very differently and see it as an expression wanting to come through you, as you said. So even things that we would label as bad, like, I don't know, like a car accident or somebody you really love passes away, and you sort of think, well, why would we create these things in our storyline? Like it's, but like you have to probably ask yourself, well, who's actually asking that question? Like, is that actually the infinite being asking that question, or is that the ego that's asking that question of like, why would we create suffering in the world? It's probably going to be the ego. I think you'd find for yourself, it's like the infinite being
has to be.
Doesn't have any judgment on any creation. It's just something to play with. It's a pure expression of creativity. There is no good, there is no bad in the conscious, as a conscious being, infinite being, it's animating everything. So that there is no experience is better or worse than the other. It's just something to actually play with and go through a range of emotions and experience it, as you said, like express it through your body.
And feeling into those emotions, not being afraid of them. I think over the years, many, many years, that we've almost trained the human species to suppress all the emotions. Like, it's not a good thing to feel sad or angry or depressed or all these different things. It's great to feel happy. Everyone loves that. You know, and it's almost like we're giving people pills and kids pills and all that sort of stuff when they're seemingly out of control type thing. You know, they've got ADD and all that sort of stuff. Like, you never heard about that stuff back when I was a kid. Like, I actually was pretty much borderline ADD. Well, I didn't have pills or all that sort of stuff. Like, it just wasn't medicated and stuff like it is now. And it's almost like, oh, we can't handle you when you're out of control. But if you're a little bit depressed and a little bit tired and you just want to sleep all the time, then that's okay, because we can control you doing that. So, it's just, I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, it's just really interesting that we're now labeling so many different things. That's what I was getting at. And suppressing our emotions, sort of thing. It's like, if we could just express what we're feeling, type thing, literally we'll have no disease left. Most of it is caused by stress, and stress only ever comes from an unexpressed emotion or an unexpressed way of being in our human form. It's like pushing stuff down, bubbling away, and then suddenly, oh wow,
yes, because they do it enough times over years and years and years, and you end up with the physical symptom in your body of that suppressed emotion that you haven't expressed over years.
Which I think is perfect when it comes back here to Marcy saying that the world around us is there to remind us about living with our ego. It's true. We're so obsessed with it, and we don't even realize it. I'm so obsessed with the whole ego and the story and the games and all that sort of stuff.
I was going to say, even in the whole spiritual world, I guess that whole movement that's been kind of born, I guess, of like positive thinking, you know, like this, and it's all, it's great to think positively, because a lot of that is actually, you know, a lot of it is around noticing yourself as the conscious being, but a lot of it is also kind of negating the supposed bad things that happen to us as well. So it's like, oh, if I just be positive all the time, then I don't have to think about all those other things. And it's just like, have you ever noticed that it's really hard to be positive all the time? It just doesn't happen. You know, if in the world of physics, I guess, it's like a positive can't exist without a negative. Like, it's actually impossible in our physical world for a positive and a negative charge to not exist at the same time. And if you start doing some digging down into that concept, which is what Dr. John Demartini's work used to be all about, that we used to do quite a lot for many years. We used to facilitate at his events and were trainers and things like that for his work. And it's so true at the end of the day, like that equilibrium point, that 0 point that people talk about, like where everything is neutral, which is our true nature. You know, physics is even showing that as well. But you do have positive, negative charges, and until you bring them into balance, they're going to keep playing out in your life. So the more you elevate yourself up and get super excited about things, there'll be something that will happen in your life, and it might not correlate to that same event. It will show up in some other area of your life sometimes. Sometimes it will be directly related to that event too, but a lot of the time it's in some other area of your life. So you're really going good at your career and you're really super pumped up about that, but your relationship's in the ditch, you know, like you get really super excited about something, and then next thing you have an accident that kind of humbles you and brings you back down to, you trip over or something, and it kind of brings you back into like, oh yeah, I was kind of getting a bit of above myself there, or something like that. So it's always going to happen as part of the human game, but it's how can you play from this neutral place? How can you play from that 0 point of knowing that you're the infinite energy of everything? And
it's really the story comes from that duality, I guess we're talking about here, is the positive and negative charges, like Mandy's talking about. The ego actually separates the two of them. So in actual fact, above the human form type thing, in the infinite form, positive and negative, don't even exist for a start. The human concept, and it's just one. So there's one energy type thing. But when we come down to the human form, to actually create the human form, we actually needed to split the two of them. So you need to split the positive and negative. So this is quantum physics, if you like. That actually gives rise to reality. The hard surfaces that we see on different things, gives rise to all this. So without duality, without positive and negative actually being separated, you wouldn't actually have reality that we see around us.
Yeah.
So it actually is necessary. But what it does is then creates what we call the ego in the storyline. So we have positive things and we have negative things, and everybody's different. So some people think that surfing is great, other people are scared shitless of it. Some people look at a war or a hurricane or something and absolutely horrific, and then other people sit there and go, wow, look at all the good things that happened from it. Like people came together, they helped each other, they were two opposing townships type thing that never speak to each other suddenly came together to help people in this earthquake or whatever happened type thing. So there's always the corresponding positive and negative type thing to everything. So it's who's right and who's wrong, when you really sort of
age-old question.
dive into it. Exactly. It's impossible to actually have a right and a wrong because everybody's going to be different about that. So I can look at something.
Even in an extreme case of like a war, like say, for example, like most people probably that we associate with, like being in the spiritual kind of world would look at war and kind of think, oh, it's bad. We shouldn't be going to war. We can see the consciousness that gives rise to conflict. And so I think, well, there must be a much better way to sort of come to, how do you solve conflicts with people? There has to be a better way than sort of going to war and shooting each other and killing each other and bombing towns and all that kind of thing. But if you were to, your character in the story was to be a suicide bomber, like in Syria, say, in your storyline, you would be convincing yourself, I mean, I'm putting myself into that character, like you would be convincing yourself that you're doing a good thing, like by being a suicide bomber. You in your mind, it's good what you're doing, whereas probably most people from the outside world are looking at you and saying that's bad what you're doing. So it's based on your storyline, what your ego is telling you at the end of the day, because it's the ego that's telling that suicide bomber that it's good what they're doing, and it's our ego that's telling us that it's bad what that person is doing. Like it's essentially every storyline that each person plays out, this individual storyline is going to have a very unique experience of life, and that's the whole point of it, is that the infinite energy that moves through us wants to have absolute freedom and expression in every single form that it could ever think of. That's why we've got such a varied world and such diversity and so many cultures. And so like it's just like there's so many things to play with, so many different expressions of infinite energy in the world, but it's how we interact with them. If we know ourselves as that infinite being coming through our body and we get to interact with other aspects of our own self, then how does that shift how you start to interact with the world? Like those barriers that we put up between people start to fall away because we just see them as an aspect of ourselves. Like it can't be any other way when you come at it from that conscious aspect.
And you're just seeing different storylines playing out around you. So some will label as positive, some will label as negative, some are good, some are bad. But somebody else coming along looking at the exact same thing will go, oh, I don't see it that way. I see it something totally different. So, that's what gives rise to people's opinions and people's judgments and all that sort of stuff. So, which is fine. There's no problem with that. But it's when we impose those things onto other people and go, I'm right and you're wrong. Who gives you the right to say that you're right and somebody else is wrong? They're just playing out a different storyline.
So, and how do you actually know that you're right or wrong? Like at the end of the day, like it's kind of like, how do
your own measurement, or the world told you that, like, society told you that, or somebody else down the road told you that, or the magazine told you that. That's like, but then where did they get their authority from? Like really questioning, like, where does the authority of anyone
come from?
So then you sort of start running in your own lane type thing a little bit more. Stop worrying about everybody else. Run your own life. And be, all you can do is be conscious. And I guess this is sort of coming back down to Marcy's thing here is like, all you can do is be present and run your own race. Like stop worrying about everybody else and what they're doing. And just, I guess, be more conscious type thing, like really bring consciousness to every aspect of what you're doing and not labeling and judging things so much and just going, it's just a storyline. I'm just playing a storyline right now and it doesn't matter. It can be anything. And then when you really get that, then your storyline can be anything you want it to be. You can Just keep creating new storylines, new plots, new episode. Think of it as a new episode. And it's sort of what we do when we go house sitting too, because we change every couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever. And it's like, oh, a new chapter. That's exactly what it feels like. It's close this Malaysian chapter right now, and we're about to go and have a Paris chapter. Then we'll close that one, and we're about to go and have a Belgium chapter. So it's sort of quite cool in living this lifestyle to actually have different chapters. Like I get that if you've got the same place to live and the same job and all that sort of stuff, it's a little bit more difficult. And then I guess you have to artificially put that in. Where how can you keep recreating yourself, creating new versions of yourself type thing. And by tuning into the infinite, you're naturally going to do that because that's what it does. It changes all the time. So we see people like, Madonna and stuff. That's the queen of changing who she is and stuff. And I'm not saying all of it's been infinitely driven. So it's quite ego driven. But it's that sort of thing. Like she's come out time and time and time again as a brand new person, pretty much. And it's like, that's possible. Like how many times, I can really look at my life and see sections of my life that have been so different to each other.
You completely reinvent yourself.
Out now is completely different to when I was in the federal police, married to a man, going out and doing wilderness type stuff all the time. Like that was our passion. Totally different life to what I'm living right now. With no spirituality, that wasn't an interest of mine back then. Like completely different person. So I think you can see sections where when you reflect, on it and go, oh wow, I actually have changed. Like I really am running a totally different storyline now. Completely different.
And things that happen in your storyline change you obviously as well. So like say the death of somebody really close to you ultimately changes you at the end of the day and how you show up in the world. Like for a lot of people, or like a very serious illness, someone might get cancer and be really close to facing death, and then for a lot of times the people that go through those type of scenarios really start to look at their life and question things and sort of think about how they're showing up and how they're sweating the small stuff and letting things stress them out all the time, and they let a lot of stuff just go and they start being more in the moment, and oftentimes they start to get better at that time because it doesn't always play out like that too. It's that might not be their storyline, but for a lot of those people that start to just be in the present moment and start to live life and do the things that they really want to do now because they think they don't have much time left, so they suddenly let themselves do all the things that they'd love to do, which they've been putting off for years and waiting till retirement and putting money away and putting that off. And now they suddenly go, you know what, I'm going to go on that trip around the world. I'm going to go and visit my grandkids. I'm going to go and start painting because I've always wanted to start painting. And when I was waiting till I had more time and things like that. And they start actually living that life and letting themselves have that expression. They a lot of the time start to get better, or they get over the thing, they come up with the solution of how they're going to get around that scenario. Or in the case of someone passing away, say, for example, oftentimes it might remind someone because maybe the circumstance that that person passed away in, it just wakes something up in them and kind of you know what, I don't know when I'm going to go. So I'm going to start living my life. And they suddenly give themselves permission to do all these things that they've been thinking about for years. And they suddenly have this new whole outlook on life, new lease of energy comes through. They change directions. They let go of a relationship. They move house. They, whatever it is. And everyone probably knows somebody like that, or maybe you've gone through that. So it's kind of you had a direct experience of what that is like where you suddenly start to move from this infinite energy rather than your ego running the story all the time. You start to step into that space of feeling that freedom of being creative. At the end of the day, that you can recreate yourself at any point in time that you want to. It's totally available to do that. It's just we think it's got to happen in a certain way, or we have a timeline around it, which we've talked about in a few videos too. That whole aspect of time comes into things, and we think that things have to take so much time before they can happen. And it's what if we could let go of all those stories and actually just step into that space of what feels expansive right now, I think we spoke about yesterday or the day before. It's just when you're facing a decision point to do anything in your life, it's does that feel heavy or does that feel light? And you move towards the thing that feels light, which is your infinite energy wanting to come through and express, and all the creativity is tied up in that area. Whereas the heavy feeling is the ego. It's the ego that wants to take you down the known path, the measurable path, the safe path, the
Yeah.
No, but I feel needed this way. I'll get love if I do this. Like that's all the ego's looking for is love at the end of the day. It will do anything to get love in, well, what it thinks is love. It's always coming from a need and from fear. So ask yourself that question too. It's just like, am I coming from need or am I coming from love right now? And that's usually an indication too of where when you're in ego or not in ego either as well. So
yeah, and I think oftentimes human nature can be to wait until something goes tragically wrong before we start waking up and questioning stuff. And I've done the same thing. We lost everything in Dubai. That was a massive wake-up call for us. A huge crumbling of the storyline and the ego itself type thing, and a real humbling to then go and live a lifestyle that we absolutely love. And it's like, but why did it take that? It was actually available to us the entire time. We didn't even have to go through that experience, technically. But I guess it's not shutting down the experiences that do happen, the big things that take place in life. Normally life's just bubbling away type thing with things happening every day. And then suddenly, bang, there's this massive thing that does happen and really impacts you. And that might be the death of a parent or a child, getting a divorce. Suddenly you didn't expect it, and suddenly, bang, like I'm getting a divorce. How did that happen? It could be, or you get a health scare yourself or somebody else does. Like there's so many things that go on that suddenly are those wake-up points. And so they're not bad things. They're actually things to be really stepping into and going, okay, now I get it. I can get what this is trying to do to me. It's trying to wake me up to just letting go. And it's like, okay, those people that had a near-death experience that suddenly go and live their life, were they always capable of doing that? Of course they were. Like nothing's changed other than they've woken up and gone, oh God, I haven't got much time here. I better go do stuff. It's like, but I guess human nature is not to think that way. We think we have this sort of, it won't happen to me. I'll be okay. It happens to other people, not to me. Like it's sort of, and that's a good thing, I guess, because, otherwise you'd be scared shitless the whole time of like, oh my God, I'm going to fall. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get cancer. You're constantly afraid. And there's definitely people that live like that, contracts and bits and pieces that think they're going to get everything. But for the general, masses, I guess people are not thinking that way. They're thinking quite optimistically about themselves. And it does take sometimes a bit of a wake-up call to actually go, oh, wow, I actually don't have, I am finite here in this little being suit. And I have to do something about it if I want to, like if I really do want to step it up. And I think most people's drive is to have, you don't wake up in the morning thinking, oh, I wish I was less than I was yesterday. Everybody's natural propensity and drive is to wake up and go, wow, what can I do that's more today? How can I have more money? How can I have more health? How can I be bigger in the world? How can I express myself more? How can I have more and better friends type thing? Like, so, and I feel like our natural progression is that. So it's like, don't wait for the big things to come. I guess it's that feather brick truck. It's sort of like, are you getting a little tickle to go and do something right now that you haven't done before, or that says you need to change a part of your life? It might be to let go of a relationship, or get rid of your credit card, or I don't know, go overseas, go traveling. But you're ignoring it. It's like, because it's not the right time. And it's like, it's never going to be the right time. And I know that sounds cliche because everyone says it. But it truly, from an infinite standpoint, it is never going to be the right time.
I guess from the infinite space, the time is irrelevant anyway. So there is no good or bad about the time, and the ego is the one that will tell us that it's not a good time. I don't have time. This would be time. Would be next year. I'll be less busy next year, or whatever the story we want to tell ourselves.
But I think it does come back to what we talked about the other day, which is you've got to make a decision. So as soon as you make a decision that you're going to go and do that thing, cut up your credit card, let go of that relationship, go overseas. As soon as that decision is made, everything changes. Your entire reality has to change around that. So suddenly all the support comes to actually enable those things, if it's true for you to do those things.
Or you reach the next decision point where you have to then choose the heavy or the light feeling again. You're constantly being pulled to the expansive feeling. It's whether we choose that or not. The ego would try to make us go for the heavy known side of it. Whereas, infinite, we haven't been put into this world with no like
Guidance.
guidance. You know, we've talked about guidance before. It's just like we're always being guided when we tune into that space. So that is that light, expansive feeling when we tune into things about, oh, I'd really like to go and do that thing, and it like just lights up your whole body. And you know, ego wants to immediately step in and say, well, you can't do that, or you couldn't do this, or it might say, yeah, go and do that thing, but it has an agenda behind why you're going to go and do that.
You got some money from doing that.
Yeah, you're going to make this, or you're going to get this outcome, or this person's going to fall in love with you if you do that. And it's definitely coming still from that agenda-driven place, rather than just being, no, I just want to do this because it feels expansive. I don't quite understand what's going to come out of it, because you won't know. That's the thing. It's all tied up in this infinite potential of making that decision of stepping into that expansive space. And that's where the creativity is. That's where the infinite energy gets to move through you. So, yeah. So just think of that concept of like, you think of it from that game aspect as well. It's like if you wake up in this human body, but say you woke up with consciousness straight away, like, so just so we can understand like some of the, you know, what we're talking about. So you already know that you're an infinite being created this human game, and you're a character in your own game, and everyone around you is something that you kind of get to interact with. Then you know that this little ego aspect of you is like it's part of your creation, like, and you know from the beginning that it's there to basically it's not going to stop you. It basically wants to live. The ego wants to live at the end of the day. So it's going to do everything that it can to survive. And whether that looks like it's good, bad, positive, negative, it's going to do everything that it can to get love, which we've spoken about in a much earlier video. We talked about the aspects of the ego, like the ego does everything out of need, because it needs to survive. It needs to find love, but not the unconditional, you know, infinite love. It's looking for love in the form of we spoke about it, like recognition and appreciation and security. Yeah, so it's not love from that unconditional place. It's definitely
not real love.
No, it's how it keeps its it's how it keeps living, basically. So it wouldn't have a life if it didn't, you know, as we've just sort of said, like if the infinite energy is everything, and it's all the one thing, then the ego can't actually be separate to it. It's part of it. It's the creation of it. So, but in the human game, and we've come in to be finite, the ego has a finite, like, we can't really say finity. I'm not sure that's a word, but it's like it has
a new word, finity.
It has a like a what's the word, like a use by date, if you like. Is that kind of, it's not the word I'm looking for. It's kind of like it can only exist while we're alive in this human form. Like as soon as we go back into, you know, wave lengths, like in the universe, the ego can't exist anymore. So if you look at it from that aspect, it's just like, well, it's going to do whatever it's got to do to survive. So it's going to try and stop you from taking those steps to, like we just said, like someone holds themselves back from going on that trip, starting that course, changing careers, like all those things that we sort of think, oh, I'll do it one day when the conditions are right, when the circumstances are right. Like, and the ego will always make sure that the circumstances are not right, because that would mean that you'll start to step into your infinite energy and probably start to get to know yourself on a much deeper level and start bringing awareness to those things. So it's going to do whatever it can to not make you go down that path. So if you start coming out from that conscious perspective and going, well, that's all it's trying to do. It's just trying to live at the end of the day. And the more awareness, the more light you keep shining on those things when they show up, and just keep saying, is that true? Like, is that actually true? Like, can I not go, could I just not go on that trip tomorrow? And then you might have the story come in, oh, well, they don't have money. It's like, well, who says that you have to have money to go on a trip? How do you know that somebody's not going to gift you a trip, or you're not going to enter a competition and you're going to win a trip, or your work's going to send you away on a trip? Like, maybe it's not going to be a trip. Maybe you think you're feeling like a trip, but it shows up in some other complete form, but you're looking for some other kind of feeling, and it gets satisfied by that event, So you just don't know. You've got to stay in that infinite space all the time and just see the ego for what it is. It's part of our human creation. It's finite. It's always going to be looking because of need. So anytime you feel driven by it, it's just like, just give it some love. Like, that's basically, at the end of the day, like, and don't listen to it. Like, it's almost like a little kid that's looking for love because it's neglected. So how would you talk to a little child like that? Like, if that little child was coming up to you and saying, Mummy, I need some love, like, you're gonna go away, go over there in the corner. Like, it's kind of sort of, you pay some attention to it, and then still get on with, you know, doing what you're going to do, like step into that expansive space and live from that place of love. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And as Marcy said, like being present definitely is one very key aspect to letting the ego go. So the ego cannot exist in the present moment. It only ever exists in the past or the future. And if you really think about that, your stories only ever exist when you think about a story going on in your head or thoughts are going on in your head. It's either about the past and you're bringing them into the now, or you're thinking and worried about the future and what's going to happen, and you're bringing that into the now. So there is only ever the now, because you can only ever think about the past or the future in this present moment.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a way to look at it as well. As like you're only ever present, actually. So in the storyline, you tell yourself, "Oh, I'm not present right now. I'm thinking about something else." It's like, yeah, but that thought is in the present. So
happening now.
You are present.
Thinking about something that happened 10 years ago, but you're thinking about it now. Like that's the thing. It doesn't exist 10 years ago. Like it's existing now in your mind as a supposed memory that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think you know, a lot of the spiritual teachings and consciousness and stuff is always sort of is hedging towards like, oh, you have to get present. It's like, well, you are present. You can't be anything but present, because there is nothing but the present moment.
Yeah.
So you may not be focused on.
Yeah, you never get into that infinite energy. It's a constant. It's a given. Like it's the thing that underlies that.
It's different to that. Like it's exactly the same concept. Is that you can't be not infinite and you can't be not present.
Yeah.
So as soon as you identify yourself as like, oh, I'm present, then you're present. Like it's, you know, it's the same as creativity. Oh, I'm creative. So suddenly, oh my God, I'm actually creative. Like, funnily enough.
Yeah.
As soon as you identify that you are that thing, then you are that thing.
Yes.
So the present moment definitely is just bringing your awareness back to that. And it's about becoming conscious of the fact that you're present.
Yes.
So that grounds you in this scene right now. Whatever you've got going on around you right now, if you look around, it's like that will actually make you present in that scene. So you're not off thinking about something that happened in childhood, and you're in that scene. So don't forget, this is all a movie. So, you know, we haven't gone back reflecting on, you know, this particular scene of the movie. And we're not forward projecting into a future scene that we haven't even acted out yet, and chances are won't even happen. Yeah. So it's about being in this particular scene. So look, maybe that is one way to sort of really, for all of us to really feel into it now. I was like, oh, I'm in this scene right now. I've got this script here. I have to actually act out. I can't be bothered about what's going to happen next week. I haven't been handed that script yet, so I can't be bothered about it. The script in the past, well, we've already done that script. So
you can't change it. So,
there's no point sort of trying to go back and do anything with it. It's already been acted out. So it's finished. Like, let it go. The past is not worried about you, so why are you worried about the past? So I guess that's one way of sort of really feeling into it. And I don't know. I think
it's present. I think, like you said, like because you know, it's something that gets thrown around a lot. I guess that thing of be present, because the ego then can start getting a hold of that too, and kind of going, oh, I've got to be present. I've got to try and be present. Like that's the way
to try to be present. Like
now. So if you have to try
meditation, I've got to do yoga. I've got to, when I go for a run, I'm present, but I'm not present if I do this. It's just like, the whole.
If there's thinking going on with it, then that's the ego taking a hold of that too. So a good exercise, I'm just thinking that our friend 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙩 gets people to do too, is just sit with your feet on the floor and then feel the sensations in your feet, like, and through your body, like really bring your attention to, like, she says to do this like first thing in the morning, as soon as you like swing your legs out of bed, put them on the floor just for a minute or two, and really just bring your attention to the sensations in your feet, feeling that your feet on the floor, just the sensations that are moving through your body, through your, you know, maybe bring some awareness through the rest of your body. And that just is a way to bring yourself really present. And yes, you might have a thought that will, you know, kind of come in about, oh, I've got to call so-and-so, or I better check my email, whatever that thing is. It's like, just let it go. Just keep bringing that attention back to the sensation in your body. It's a really cool way to, like, really quickly just bring presence to your day, like before you even start your day. You completely shift how your day goes by just bringing a few minutes of, like, just actual attention to the truth of what's actually going on right now. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, and I guess when you wake up in the morning, it is an interesting process because you've gone from the infinite blackness, we're out like a light, and you know, you're not in the conscious awareness type thing at that point. So, you know, we're in dream space, so that can be anything, and it usually is pretty crazy. And then suddenly our eyes open, and reality trickles into place again, and it's like, oh, we're back here. And this is like quite funny, like when you are traveling regularly, like we do, there are definitely times where I sort of lie there with my eyes still closed and go, where am I? Like, especially after we've just traveled to a place, and I've done it like heaps of times. Like for some reason I did it not long ago, and it sort of, I was seriously there for about 30 seconds going, I actually don't know what city I'm in. I've got no idea, like literally no idea right now. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. We traveled here and we arrived into this place, and I'm in this bedroom right now. Okay, that's really bizarre. But it's just sort of a funny experience, like to then, I guess to me, it sort of exemplifies or sort of magnifies what it can be like type thing of suddenly waking up in the morning and going, okay, where am I? Like, oh, I'm in this, like I'm in this reality right now. That's right. I'm in this movie set. That's right. Okay.
You know, if you really want to throw like, you know, it out there, and it's just like, well, how do you even know that your dreams are not reality? And us talking here now is a dream. Like, how do we actually know? Like, we don't actually have any kind of way of proving it. So it's just kind of, yeah, it's just like know yourself as that infinite energy that's animating it all, and it's just like it could be anything, as Nat said. Like, it's just play with it all. It is just a movie script at the end of the day that we can change as soon as we bring our awareness and our attention into the moment. We can shift it in an instant.
You could be sitting in a giant chair and all of it, and you're just projecting like you're having a movie, like you haven't moved at all. And there is some conversation around that, you know, like the whole concept of the unmoving mover type thing. So I don't know who actually who said that many moons ago.
I don't know. I've heard it in multiple different ways, so I'm not sure who.
Some philosopher, some very cool philosopher. But that concept of the unmoving mover, so that you're here, you never move, and everything's moving around you. So all of reality is taking place, all the storylines, all the bits and pieces is moving around you, and you never move from the center. And so, like, if you really were to step into the Inception movie, it's like, what's to say you're not just sitting in some giant cosmic chair type thing, and none of this actually even took place? Like, it all was just a dream at the end of the day. And if it's a dream, as we know, anything's possible. Like, it can be literally anything. And we have such crazy dreams at times. You wake up and go, oh my God, that was the weirdest thing ever. Like there was monsters, and then, you know, my mum was doing something, and then, you know, this stretched out, and suddenly there was some giant thing, spaceship thing that, you know, it's like, okay, like it's really weird. But why not?
The day, like most of our experience of life happens in our head. Like, we look out and we think, oh, we're looking at such and such over there, but it's the thoughts, it's the constant thought narrative that goes on. That only happens in our head. Like, it's this, you know, we're looking at a person and we're going, oh, they must be thinking that I look really tired today. Like, I better look like I'm more awake. I better, like, and it's like that person could be, how do we know what that person's actually thinking?
No idea.
All this whole story is just going on in your head most of the time. Like, it's kind of probably 99% of the time, okay, yes, you're out there and you're interacting with things in the physical world, but your story just goes on in your head. It's your projection out into the world, your interpretation, or the ego's interpretation. It's usually the ego's interpretation when we're not being in that present moment. Is all the story that goes on is coming from your ego, like creating all the interactions and what you think you should do and shouldn't do, and what this person thinks of you, and
what you think of their outfit, and what you think of your outfit as a result. Like, it's just
So you think about it from that way, and you just kind of go, wow, like, that's how much energy goes into into all that. Whereas I could as the infinite being and be present in each moment and make the decisions based on that next light feeling and that next, you know, unknown creativity that's tied up in that. And know that the ego is not real in this lifetime, as we said, as we started off with. It's just like it only exists in this finite world. So we can't get rid of it. So we might as well kind of see it for what it is.
Using it. Yeah, I feel like when you wake up to it, enough and you realize that the ego doesn't even exist, which is the whole basis of this conversation, then you get to play with it. You get to use it. So you're not being controlled by it, because most people are being controlled by it because they're in the story instead of being outside of the story and molding the story to whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
So where the ego actually has no power, and you're quite aware of that, but you'll entertain yourself with different storylines. You're going to create whatever you want, so you can entertain yourself here. That's what you're doing here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that's the ultimate conclusion. Yes, the ego doesn't exist when you are aware of that enough. And maybe the starting point for that is to stop talking about the ego, stop even entertaining the concept in the first place, and ask yourself, what would it be like if there was no ego? If I took the ego away in my storyline, how would it be different? I want to have an experience of that, and just ask for that.
Keep bringing your attention back to the actual truth all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, be present in the moment. Go outside, and instead of looking around at people's outfits and, oh, is that person thinking this about me and all that sort of stuff, running the narrative like you're talking about, man, going out and actually saying, I want to have an experience of not judging anything. I'm not labeling anything. And it's quite interesting when you do that. And sometimes you have to request to do that because you can't do it on your own type thing. Your own human self can't really do it. But to actually just ask your infinite self to give you that experience, because it's amazing how different it is. You know, I remember being taught that, and I don't even know who, it might have been Amir actually, Nizogi, that said it. It was like, going to the park now at lunchtime and have an experience of not labeling anything. Don't walk around and go, there's a tree, there's bark, oh, there's leaves, oh, look at that bird over there. Oh, look at that, what's that person doing over there on the picnic rug, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the commentary that goes on, even if it's subconscious.
Yeah. Even if there's no judgment around it, like you're just labeling,
labeling it.
It's still label. It's that whole thing of labeling it. It's like there's still stories tied up in those things as well.
So
it's just actually having a direct experience of that creation without putting a label on what it actually is.
Yeah, and then you get the essence of that thing. So suddenly you're feeling the energy all around you of that park or that scene, and it's like a totally different experience altogether.
You become aware of everything at once. So like you can hear the birds chirping, you can hear that conversation happening over there, you can hear water trickling in the little creek next to you, you can hear leaves falling off the tree, you can hear the wind kind of blowing, you hear some traffic over there. Like, it's just all of a sudden you are just omnipresent with everything that's going on, and you're aware of everything that's happening without kind of story behind it. It's just a sensation that you're experiencing. Yeah.
And the other sensation is, I'll guarantee, that everything feels perfect in that moment, that you don't want anything to change. And how interesting, like that. What if you did that all the time?
Yeah, there's nothing that needs to change. Yeah.
Nothing that would need to change. It's like if you could always stay in that moment like that. And we're not going to always stay in that moment. You have to be more and more conscious of being in that moment like that, doing that, and not labeling things. But it's amazing when you do it, and it's like, wow, everything feels really perfect right now. Like, it's all really cool. And it's like, what if you could have a life like that? Maybe that's the infinite space where nothing does need to change, because there is no good or bad.
Yes.
There's no positive or negative. It all just is. It is what it is.
Yes.
Wow, long session today. We talked about so much stuff.
Well, thanks for joining us again. And let us know.
Thanks for persevering if you got through this one.
Let us know in the comments if anything sparks you.
Angelito's just showed up. Oh, we're about to finish up, but
okay.
Tuned in, as Nat said, I'm in this reality right now. Yep. Welcome to my reality. So we're just about to finish. Sorry about that, Angelina. You just missed an hour of talking about all this stuff. But, thanks for tuning in. It's pretty cool. But it was a really cool session. That was amazing. Like, wowza, some of the stuff we talked about.
Yes.
Very cool. All right. Well, let us know what you got out of today. What was the big takeaways from today? Was it finding out that there is no positive or negative, and that you actually created the whole thing? Was it that you could actually let go of the ego? The ego doesn't even exist, and that you could actually exist without it.
Yeah.
Or some of the exercises that we gave today that you know, are you going to
Yeah.
go away and do some of those things? I really highly encourage you to go, particularly in a park, because I think there's less noise. Go into somewhere in nature and actually purposely go out and not label stuff, because it is an amazing experience of your
Yeah.
infinite.
Yes.
Very, very cool.
And if it, you know, if that's thought wants to come up around, oh, I don't know how to let go of ego, because that is a valid kind of question. You know, we've just been living with it for so long. It's like just actually be in that I don't know space. Like maybe you don't need to know how to let the ego go. It's only the ego that's going to be trying to convince you, like, oh, I don't know how to let this go. Like it doesn't want to die. It doesn't want to die, remember, so it's going to keep that thought going constantly. Like, well, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to let it go. So it's just like just being the I don't know space, like, which is that non-labeling, being with everything, being present. Stay in that space. If that's the only thing you ever do is like stay in that space.
Yeah, be in the curious I don't know space. It's a very cool space.
Cool.
Yeah. There you go.
Just
Then
see you
you'll get
tomorrow.
to know everything.
Yes.
All right. Let's tune in again tomorrow. What a cool experience.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Talk to you then. Bye, Angelino in LA.
Yeah.
Bye now.